returned to Bridgend Council with a bang this morning, as I only came home yesterday. So it's very cold and it's very wet, so I hope you're all keeping warm and you've all got your blankets around your knees. Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of Cabinet Committee Corporate Parenting, which will be held as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting either from Council Chamber or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or onto silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones and, where remote, their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as the chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure that the connection remains as stable as possible. Whether in the Council Chamber or remote, if any members or officers wish to raise a point or have a question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order that I receive the requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I would also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use, please. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence, please? I already have Councillor Spanswick, but are there any others, please? Thanks very much, Claire.
Chair, could I give apologies from Cherie Dixon, Group Manager for Disability Services, Care Experienced Children and 16 plus.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Not so much an apology, but if the meeting does proceed past quarter past 11, I am going to have to leave then.
Okay, thanks very much. Is that all? Right, that's fine. We'll move on to declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest, please? No. Councillor Thomas, is that another hand or is it legacy?
Legacy, apologies.
That's fine, thank you very much. So shall we move on to the approval of the minutes? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the 12th of October 2022, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second those minutes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, an update on the implementation of the Basic Income Pilot Scheme. Claire, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Claire Marchant, Corporate Director of Social Services and Wellbeing in Bridgend. The report that you have before you this morning is really a report for information for Cabinet Corporate Parenting Committee. As committee members will know, the Basic Income Pilot is a flagship policy for Welsh Government in Wales, and the population group that Welsh Government have decided to sort of progress the implementation of the pilot with its care experienced children and care leavers, and there's quite a distinct cohort as set out within the paper. So the purpose of the report is to update the committee on the implementation of the pilot, and particularly how we're taking forward the implementation of the pilot in Bridgend. And I'm joined in the meeting this morning by our Deputy Head of Children's Services, Ian McMillan, and by the team manager for our 16 plus team, Stuart Osborne. And this is Stuart's first attendance at committee this morning, so he's not going to present the report, but if there are operational questions about how the implementation of the pilot is progressing in Bridgend. Stuart is probably the best person in Cherie's absence to answer those questions. So as the background to the report sets out, the basic income pilot was announced by Welsh Government in February 2022. It's a pilot scheme, and you can see there the group of care leavers who are eligible for the scheme. The cohort were identified in March 2022 in Bridgend, and there are 25 eligible young people. And obviously it's a scheme for care experienced care leavers, which is voluntary for their participation in. So it's very much for care leavers to opt into participation in the scheme. As the report sets out, the response so far in Bridgend has been enthusiastic to the scheme, and very much embedded now within the work of the 16+ team. It's a very well established team, very passionate about the experiences of care leavers and giving them the very best chances in life. And you can see that there are lead workers in that team, and the social workers and the personal advisors are very involved in the implementation. You can also see that Welsh Government have expanded their single advice agreement with Citizens Advice Cymru to provide specialist advice to young people. I think as the basic income pilot implementation progresses, that the committee will be very interested in the impact and being very interested in hearing from young people who actually experience the pilot in terms of what it's meant for them in their lives. And I think that's going to be the most valuable part of the evaluation of the pilot. So if I just draw members to the recommendations, the recommendation is that committee consider the contents of the report and note the findings, and hopefully you will feel fully informed and be able to be involved in the implementation in Bridgend. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Claire. You've answered two questions for me. One, I think I would not only like to speak to those receiving the pilot scheme, but also those that don't experience that pilot and see what the difference is for me. I think that would be very valuable. I understand the background behind the universal basic income pilot, and as a mother and a grandmother who has children going through schools and universities, I'm well aware of the implications of them coming home even to just do their washing, as an example. So having their own finance to support them, I think, is invaluable. Councillor Thomas, please.
Thanks, Chair. Oh, am I on? Yeah, good. There we are. Sorry about that. Bit fingers and thumbs this morning. Yeah, thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. First thing, I accept that they're care leavers. I'm just quite interested in what tenure they're living in currently, because I'm wondering, like universal credit, the housing benefit element of universal credit can be paid directly to social and private rented sector landlords. And I'm just wondering if there's a provision in the award of universal basic income for a direct payment to their housing provider. That was my first question. Go on, Chair, you can say something, looks like.
I was going to bring Stuart in because I'm not sure of the technicalities. I know that they removed part of the housing benefit, and you used to be able to pay directly to landlords. They removed that and it came to the residents themselves, and you had to make a special case. I'm assuming that it's still the case, but Councillor Good has his hand up, and I would imagine that he knows.
I don't, I'm afraid, Chair. I was actually raising my hand for a question.
Okay, thanks very much. Is Stuart there, please? And are you able to answer us, or is this something that we need to come back to Councillor Thomas with?
No, I think I can answer. The answer is that the payment goes directly to the young person, and then the young person is expected to pay the landlord.
Thanks, Chair. Can I go on?
Yes.
And that concerns me, that we could have very vulnerable people ended up in massive housing arrears, which leads me to my second question. And that is that there was a report from Come Off Cymru which looked at the impact of the cost of living payments and very vulnerable people having access to quite large sums of money and not really been experienced in handling this sort of money and the implications of that. Now, the cost of living payments dwarf the monthly universal basic income payments. So I'm just wondering if there's any concerns, or is there any support in supporting these potentially vulnerable people in having quite large payments. And there's two more. It's a 3-year scheme. I'm just wondering also what happens if during that 3-year scheme they get a job. Does the payment cease to continue? And finally, just interested in, what training. This is about giving them independence and to ensure there's the discontinuation of the reliance on the benefit system. What training and employment support is provided to these young people as well? Thanks so much. That's all my questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. I'll leave Stuart come in, but firstly, welcome to your first corporate parenting committee in the chambers. Well, even though you're virtual, Stuart. What I would say is, Councillor Thomas, my understanding from Welsh Government is the whole point of this is to get those young people ready for independence, and our officers are supporting them, as our Welsh Government. They have a team that are able to support them, but I'll leave Stuart answer the whole question for you.
Yes, in respect to the first part of the question, all the young people are allocated to a personal advisor, and the role of the personal advisor is to support young people in developing their independent living skills. And as part of that, there would be work done with young people around budgeting, etc., to be able to manage the additional finance. The second question, I think, was in relation to if a young person was to be in employment. Yes, if they were to be in employment, they would also still receive the basic income pilot, as well as what income they are making in terms of their employment. And can you remind me of the third question, please?
We've said the training support, handling the, I think Councillor Gebbie has said about the what happens if they get a job in the 3-year period. You mentioned that one, haven't you? Training support, you've covered that. Oh yeah, the support, you may have touched on this already. Support for handling large sums of money which they may not be used to, really.
Again, that would be the role of the personal advisor who's involved with the young people up until the age of 25, should they choose to continue to engage. And the personal advisor would be doing ongoing budgeting work with the young person, if indeed that work was needed, because we do have a lot of young people who are able to budget appropriately.
Excellent. Forgive me, I just need a bit of clarity on the housing benefits element. I can't remember what you said now. It's my fault. There's no direct payment, is there?
No, not directly. The payment goes to the young person.
Okay, thanks so much. That's grand.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Councillor Good.
Thank you, Deb, and welcome back. I hope you had a lovely break. You look very relaxed and happy, which is what we all like to see. I think just building on Councillor Thomas's questions, really, because I think this is a really positive scheme, and I really welcome it from Welsh Government. I think it's great to give those people who've not had the easiest start in life that opportunity to build something with support over a period that can really set them up for the rest of their lives. The only concern I have, though, is around what support exists beyond the scheme, because obviously I think we'll all recognise that the amount of money that this is providing people is probably more than a lot of people would receive for their first jobs, leaving school, or etc. And my concern is that they'll come to the end of this scheme and find themselves suddenly all alone with no support, and that money that they've become used to receiving is gone. So I was just wondering, Stuart, if you could enlighten us a little bit on what resources are in place, or what work is being done to ensure that when that young person comes to the end of that pilot, that there is that ongoing support to ensure that they're guided into the next stage of their life.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
No, that's fine if you want to answer it, Stuart. I was just going to reassure Councillor Good that any of our care experienced children, if they are considered vulnerable and they want that support until the age of 25, they get it to the age of 25. So that would cover all manner of resource. But Stuart, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, just to add, I think during the time that the young people are in receipt of the basic income pilot, I think it's an important function to try and get them engaged or ensure that they remain engaged in either in education, training or employment during that period. So the fallout when they lose the basic income pilot wouldn't be, you know, as dramatic then, because hopefully that they would be in receipt of some form of income.
Thanks both.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Give me another legacy hand. Apologies.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome back and Happy New Year to you. Yeah, thank you, Stuart. I welcome the pilot report, and we recognise it is a pilot and it's there now for us to learn lessons from. Obviously, Cardiff University can be heavily involved in developing the method then for understanding the benefits and what have we. But I wouldn't want to wait until the end of the 3 years to find out if there are any problems. So of the 25 that we have got currently on the system, I'd like to know how many of those are actually in education or in employment currently. And of the, you know, because the idea is to help them to become, you know, independent then, isn't it, and self-sustaining. So are there any obstacles that we can help with in the interim, rather than waiting until the end of the 3 years to find out, well, you know, if that was been done, then it might have had a more positive outcome. I hope that makes sense.
Stuart.
Yeah, I apologise, I can't give an exact figure on how many, and I'd be speculating if I was to give a response, how many are in education, how many are in training and how many are in employment. I'd like to say at least 80% of the 9 young people that are currently signed up to the scheme are in some form of employment, training or education. But like I said, I can't give an exact figure. But Welsh Government are expecting young people to complete surveys on a 12-monthly basis, and we should have feedback then from them surveys as to how the implementation of the basic income pilot has gone for them young people. And our personal advisors are actually supporting or encouraging the young people who are signed up to the scheme to complete them surveys.
Thanks very much. Are you happy with that response, Councillor Williams?
Well, I'm sure that's information that we can sort of bring together fairly quickly, and I think it'd be worth us sort of monitoring it on a more frequent basis, rather than, as I say, waiting for Cardiff University to do their job. So I think it's important that we help them as much as we can as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Claire?
Yeah, just to add to that, really, as committee will know, some of the key performance indicators that we monitor in terms of the outcomes for our care leavers are those in education, employment and training a year after becoming care experienced and 2 years after. Those performance indicators are based on those care experienced children who continue excuse me, my voice is going to fail me this morning, who continue to engage with us, and we would see an opportunity through the basic income pilot for more care experienced care leavers to engage with us. And I think it's right and proper, in addition to the Cardiff University evaluation, as Councillor Williams has said, that we put in place our own local measures to understand the impact, and we can certainly bring that information regularly through to Corporate Parenting Committee.
Thanks very much, Claire. And I suppose just of note is if anybody wants some good reading material, you might want to try Utopia for Realists. It's by Rutger Brennan, and it's all about universal basic income. I'm a big believer in universal basic income, and if anybody on the committee today would like a further in-depth conversation about why we should be having it for every resident of Wales, please feel free to contact me and I'll do it separately. But that's just an aside. Are members of the committee, sorry, Leader, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, I'm having difficulties raising my hand. I think it would be very helpful if we had that wider update on the progress that our care leavers are making, because this is about enhancing their their opportunities and giving them a better start and being a building block for that, isn't it, in terms of housing, employment opportunities, education opportunities. So in addition to that, evaluation by Welsh Government and indeed a Reglamont, and I think it should be in that wider context, Chair. And I'd propose that we receive a report, even if it's an annual report or perhaps every 6 months, on our care leavers, and we can include specific reference to this pilot in that project. And I'd also say that, like colleagues, I welcome the fact that we've had positive feedback so far, and it is of note that all our care leavers have engaged with this, who are eligible to engage, and I think it's fair to say that's the first time we've had a project with our care leavers where all the care leavers have engaged for understandable reasons, but that also in of itself is of benefit, isn't it? That we are able to maintain contact with and have a relationship with those care leavers, because quite often we find that some care leavers do not want to have any contact with the local authority for different reasons. And this is an opportunity not just to provide the income support, but also an opportunity to try and offer some of that wider support that we have available. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I'm sure we'll bring another report back. I can't give you a timeline though. It will be between 6 and 12 months, I'd like to say though. Are the committee happy to note the contents of this report? Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Moving swiftly on to number 5, an update on the Care Inspectorate Wales inspection of Bridgend County Borough Council's children's residential homes in 2022. Steve, are you taking this?
I believe Laura is here to take it through, but I'm happy if
Oh no, I'm sorry, I couldn't see Laura there. I'm trying to look at 2 screens. Yeah, and Claire wants to come in first anyway, both of you. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just some brief introductory remarks from me before I hand over to Laura to take you through the detail of the report. Bridgend County Borough Council has for many years been quite unusual amongst Welsh local authorities as a significant provider of children's residential care. This position is changing, with the Welsh Government eliminating profit policy priority. But it's important, I think, that committee recognises the additional accountabilities that we hold as a local authority, which are different to our counterpart authorities, and officers in this authority hold responsibilities which are different to their peers with similar job titles across Wales. Recognising this, we have recently strengthened the leadership of our regulated services, and in the last month we've appointed a dedicated responsible individual for residential care services, Dan Bolton, who's joined and is already making an impact. Residential care, as we know, is highly regulated, and from 2018 onwards the requirements of the Regulation and Inspection of Care Wales Act have applied. In our governance in Bridgend, it falls within the remit of the Cabinet Corporate Parenting Committee to receive an annual report on the outcomes of regulatory inspections, and that is what you have before you today. Children's residential care settings, as committee members know, provide accommodation, care and support to our most vulnerable children, and their safety and well-being is at the heart of all considerations. And it's important to note that the addresses and locations of children's homes aren't anywhere in the public domain, even though they will be well known in the local communities. We would also not talk in this committee about individual children and young people or staff members in those settings due to these safeguarding considerations. Overall, I will understand that members will wish to understand the strengths and the areas for improvement identified in all our regulated settings as set out in the report, but I will, in these introductory remarks, draw attention to the inspection findings in relation to Maple Tree House. These findings are very difficult reading for all of us, and they reflected the findings of an internal investigation undertaken by us as a council, which we informed Care Inspectorate Wales of, and the improvement plan that had been developed in consequence of the regulatory inspection did align with the internal improvement plan. Care Inspectorate Wales did not move to take immediate enforcement action, as they recognised that the council had instigated multi-agency safeguarding procedures through the escalating concerns processes, and CIW and other partners from police and health, as well as officers from the authority, managed those processes. The fact that we instigated those procedures does not underplay the seriousness of the findings of the report, and it was the right decision for those safeguarding meeting and for the RI of the service to move to put the service into a period of dormancy once the children resident within the service had moved on to safe regulated settings. And as a council and a statutory officer, we will not consider recommending the reopening of the service until we're absolutely confident that the full root and branch review has been completed, and that we will report the outcome of that review to the Cabinet Corporate Parenting Committee for consideration. I'll now hand over to Laura Kinsey, who will take you through some of the detail and provide some additional context to the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Hi. So as indicated in the report, really, so Claire's given you the context of the inspections that were carried out in relation to our 4 residential settings last year. And as the report outlines, the first provision that was inspected was Mapletree House. Mapletree House is a provision that offers emergency placements and assessment placements to children and young people aged 8 to 18 years. And we have 2 places for emergency provision and 4 assessment places in Mapletree House. The provision has been operational since February 2019, and I think, as indicated in the report and previous reports that we brought to this committee, there have been challenges from the outset in relation to achieving consistency of care provided in that setting. It has been quite clear from the recent inspection that we have still not achieved strong, consistent leadership that it requires, and robust management oversight and effective quality assurance systems. The children who've lived in Mapletree right from the outset have had very complex needs and have presented some very challenging and often risky behaviours. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to recruit a permanent staff team with the required level of experience and skill to be able to look after those children consistently and safely. The inspectors have noted those issues and the impact on the care provided, and that is described in the report. I think it is important to note, though, that those staff who have worked at the service have been very committed to providing the children with safe care and a positive experience when they've lived there. But unfortunately, that hasn't always been achieved for some of the reasons I've already outlined. Some of the issues that the inspectors did note and observe when they visited Mapletree House last summer were a lack of routine, poor record keeping, an unsuitable physical environment, and those were just some of the issues, but the main issues broadly that were addressed in addition to staffing and management oversight and QA. Prior to the inspection, as Claire has just already described, we had already initiated the escalating concerns process because we'd noted some of these emerging issues ourselves and advised the Care Inspectorate Wales of this, and they were engaged in the meetings in that context with other professional partners. And as we've already indicated, the issues that we'd noted and that triggered that process were reaffirmed in their own inspection of the service as well. As described in the report, we were served with priority action notices that required us to address the areas of concern in a very tight timescale as well, and those were all achieved, although we do continue to experience difficulties in terms of recruitment of staff to this residential setting in readiness for it resuming in the future, but in all of our settings presently as well. As Claire has indicated, we did take the service into a period of dormancy at the earliest opportunity. We couldn't achieve that straight away because, as I think most members of the committee are aware, there are issues across Wales and across the UK in relation to placement sufficiency for care experienced children, and that relates to fostering services and residential provision as well. So we needed to make sure the children that were still living in the service were moved on to a safe, appropriate, regulated setting as well, and the inspectors agreed with us that we should only move them when we had an appropriate place for them to move on to that would safely meet their needs as well. So on balance, it was agreed that they should stay in that setting being looked after by ourselves until we could find a suitable alternative. But we did then go into complete dormancy in September of last year. And as indicated by Claire, we will not be resuming that service until we can be absolutely confident that we've addressed the issues, made sustainable improvements, and are not in a position where we risk the standard of care deteriorating again in the future. So in terms of our other settings, the inspection findings were more positive, and there were no concerns regarding non-compliance with regulations in any of the other settings that were inspected. In Sunnybank, which is our medium to long-term provision that offers 4 places to children aged 8 to 18, it was noted that supervision and training required improvement and was less consistent than it had been previously, especially prior to the pandemic, and we recognise that had impacted on the frequency of training we were able to provide staff with. They also recommended that we achieve a full cohort of permanent staff because we were using agency staff, particularly in Mapletree House, but in Sunnybank as well. We also needed to use agency staff on occasion, and we agreed with them that our preference was to have a full permanent staff team. They did note that positive leadership was evident in Sunnybank and also Howard House in Bakers Way, where there were very positive observations about the services provided. And as indicated and described in the report, Howard House and Bakers Way are our specialist services. Howard House offers 3 places to with disabilities, and Bakers Way is our short breaks provision for those children. As described in the report, and Claire has also referenced this as well, in recognition of the issues emerging from particularly the Mapletree House inspection, but also in relation to the fact that we wanted to grow and further develop our residential provision in Bridgend. There has now been investment in a dedicated RI post to ensure that there's increased capacity for closer oversight and monitoring of all of our residential homes for children and young people. And if and when there are any potential issues about the standard of care provided, they will then be able to be addressed in a more timely way. And Claire has explained that Daniel Bolton is now in place in that position and is already making a positive impact. So that's my overview of the report, and Steve and I can respond to any questions about the report and my presentation.
Thanks very much, Laura. I really appreciate that. I am pleased that we've got another RI appointed. I am pleased that our managerial oversight is being improved. I'm very conscious of the challenges that we face in the not-for-profit agenda and the difficulties we have in appointing and recruiting permanent staff. But I'm also cognizant of the fact of the challenging behaviours that are more complex now than ever before with all of our care experienced children, and I think we all need to recognise that as a committee. Could I please ask you to pass on our thanks to all the staff involved in our residential children's services? I'm particularly aware that it's very difficult. It becomes more difficult as the years go on, and particularly in relation to Welsh Government's strategy of not-for-profit, which I actually agree with, but that doesn't assist us in the meantime in recruiting and retaining staff. So, Councillor Williams, your question first, please.
Morning, thanks very much. I've got 3 questions if possible. The first one is on staffing. You mentioned staffing about Mapletree House, Sunnybank, and also in the report it says about Harwood House. There's some vacancies too. I wondered what the plan is for staffing, if there are any concerns in relation to the staffing, and what we're going to do. Will it cause problems further down the line if we're not going to be able to recruit to those positions, please?
Yeah, I can respond to that, and Steve might want to chip in as well. So we have ongoing recruitment in relation to residential staff for our children's settings. And I won't, it is a challenge. We know that across the care sector at the moment, workforce is an issue for us. And we're continuously working with colleagues to try to look at ways of attracting people into these posts and these positions. So that is ongoing. We have had more successful recruitment in Harwood House and Bakers Way and Sunnybank more recently. So we have been addressing some of the vacancies there. The other thing we've been doing as well is trying to build our pool of casual staff as well, because one thing we noted we were having to do was rely on agency staff in some scenarios and settings, particularly when children were requiring increased staffing ratios as well, and we didn't have enough people to be able to provide that in-house. So rather than use agency staff, we are continuously trying to build our casual pool. But sometimes it's positive, but it's also then there's a flip side to it, that some of those casuals then have enjoyed working in those settings and applied for permanent posts, so then we need to rebuild the pool. But that is something else that we're doing as well. But yeah, we are working, like I say, with colleagues in marketing to look at how we can make these posts attractive and try to encourage more applications as well. And Daniel Bolton is working very closely with us on that as well, because I think that's one of his strengths and his area of expertise as well.
Thanks, Laura. Councillor Williams.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Frank.
Steve wants to come in.
Just very briefly, really, just to reassure, in terms of there are positive signs in terms of recruitment. I know we've recently had adverts closed for Mapletree House staff, where we've had 5 individuals shortlisted for interview that are due to take place next week. Again, recently for managers, we had very positive applications for manager vacancies that we advertised. We were able to recruit one, Sandy, and we actually recruited 2, but one did withdraw after. But as Laura's indicated, we've worked closely now with comms to go back out to advertise, and that'll be back out to advert next week. And again, we've got a casual worker, as Laura's described there, another additional casual worker starting, and some of the gaps that emerge within the homes are as a result, positive result of individual members of staff being promoted within their role. So currently we've got 2 vacancies in Sunnybank where people have stepped up into more senior positions within the service. So where we look to recruit to them. So it is it's not a fantastic position in terms of recruitment, but it's fairly positive, and it's probably quite positive in the current climate, really.
Thanks, Steve. Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much, because my concern obviously with staffing is, if we're saying that Mapletree had to close because of staffing as one of the issues, is whether we'll have any other of the establishments facing the same problems. My other questions are, firstly, I think you partly answered that with your recruitment for Mapletree. I wasn't sure from the report if we were opening Mapletree back up, if we could, and what the timescale was for that. And I also wanted to know how many children were concerned with Mapletree House. Are we following up those children to make sure it hasn't had an impact on them and their well-being? And that's my questions. Thanks.
Oh, well, I'd like to answer one of those, Councillor Williams. I'm very conscious of the difficulties and the complex nature of some of the young people that were there. I'm also being kept updated with their progress, because they have been moved. They are doing exceptionally well where they are. So I just want to reassure you that the move was the best thing for them. And yes, we do have a problem with recruitment. Yes, it is getting better, but we need staff that with longevity. There's no point appointing staff that are going to stay for 6 to 12 months. You inevitably learn a vast amount of skills when you work in residential care with young people. Me being a point in question, so I think it's really important that we have good quality staff, and I would prefer to appoint good quality staff on an ongoing basis rather than just recruiting because we need the numbers and bums on seats, as they say. Laura, do you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, just I can confirm what you've said, Chair, that yes, the children that will live in Mapletree are care experienced children, so will still receive the same level of support and monitoring from their allocated social workers, and as indicated, that they are doing well as well in the alternative placements that they're now experiencing. So I can assure you about that. In terms of reopening, as we, both myself and Claire, have already indicated, we will not resume this service until we can be confident that it would be safe to do so, and that's multifaceted. We would need an appropriate setting. There were issues with the environment that the service was being run from. We would need a very, very strong permanent workforce with an experienced manager in place before we could reopen, and we would need all those systems and training, etc., to support them in place as well before we could consider that. And I think, as we've already indicated, we don't have all of that in place, so there are no plans currently, unfortunately, to reopen the service, and that has been very difficult. But I think it reflects, how committed we are to making sure we get it right when we do reopen. We have had children since last September requiring emergency placements, requiring residential placements for assessment purposes. And ideally, we would have placed them in Mapletree House had it been open, but we haven't reopened it for those reasons, because we know we haven't addressed the issues that the inspectors had identified. So no, we don't plan to open it. We haven't set a date yet, and we know that as again, committee will be aware that the service that we offer or offered in Mapletree is going to be offered in a new setting in the foreseeable future when it's finished, and that is the setting in Bryn Melyn as well. So that is a new build, a purpose-built provision, that's where we plan to offer the emergency and assessment provision moving forward.
Thanks very much, Laura. I'm aware that Claire wants to come in and respond to you as well, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think just to build on what Laura has said about the future plans, when we talk about the root and branch review, what's really important is that we get the therapeutic model in this setting right, and we're doing a piece of work with our improvement partner just to evaluate the different therapeutic models, because that drives the staff training, it drives the skill mix. As the Chair Deputy Leader has referred to, we are supporting in terms of these settings the children with increasingly complex needs which challenge us, and that requires a multi-agency response. So the service that we were running in Mapletree House was delivered by social care workforce, supplemented by behavioural analysts, which was an innovative model we progressed in Bridgend. We've recognised that we need more psychology input, we need a more integrated offer with education. There is some good news, because we put in a proposal to Welsh Government as part of their eliminating profit agenda. They were investing in local authorities and not-for-profit providers, and we've got some additional monies coming in over the next couple of years which will support us to be far more multi-agency. But we've got to get that therapeutic model. It's not just about numbers of care workers, it's about the type of training they have, the skill mix, and how we develop them to develop their careers. And in the not too distant future, they'll have a fit for purpose building to do that in. So I think there is grounds for optimism, but we've got to get those basics right, and we've got to get the therapeutic model right.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm assuming that answers your question, Councillor Williams. Thank you very much. Councillor David, please.
Thanks, Chair. And can I first of all place on record our thanks to the staff, and in particular, I wanted to note that there's positive judgments about our provision, particularly Baker's Way, and also, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough, and Harwood House. there is reference to some improvements required at Sunnybank and positive commentary about the provision at Sunnybank, but I just wanted reassurance that those improvements were being made, and also I wanted to ask if there have been any subsequent concerns or reports since the inspections were made of any of the settings, please. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Who would like to answer that? Laura?
Yeah, so yes, I can assure you that the manager for Sunnybank has addressed all of the recommendations made by the inspectors, and the arrangements are in place for regular supervision and for training to be offered and provided to the staff in that service in Sunnybank. So yes, it's a bit. Like I said, the manager there is very experienced and responded to those straight away. And I would say that the inspectors were confident that that would happen as well. And I think understood to some extent the context in terms of the pandemic and that the impact that had. So yeah, those have been addressed. And I can also confirm that we haven't had any further inspections since these that are being reported today. So yeah, I can also confirm that as well, Leader.
Thanks very much, Laura. Leader, are you happy now?
Yeah, that is reassuring, and once again, I'd like us to convey to those staff our appreciation, because it has been an incredibly difficult period. We haven't long come out of a series of restrictions due to the lockdowns and the pandemic, and I know our staff in these residential homes continued to work very hard, didn't they, and face some very, very difficult working conditions. They didn't know the risks they were taking, but they still went into work every day, and they put those children and young people first. And I don't think we've had the opportunity, so we'll take the opportunity today, and I know that's something will be shared by the Chair, Deputy Leader and all members, our appreciation of the work that staff continue to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Leader. It's a job that you either love it or you hate it. I have to say that. I used to love it. The more challenging and the more difficult those young people were, the more benefit I found to going into work every day. So I really do appreciate those staff. I understand and acknowledge the difficulties that they quite often face, but I also acknowledge the satisfaction and the smiles that they get when something goes quite right for those young people. Thank you very much, both. Are the rest of the committee happy to note the report, please?
I move we note the report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. Can I have a seconder, please, to note the report? Cabinet colleagues?
Go on, I'll second it, Chair.
I'm really sorry, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Good. Sorry, Councillor Thomas, you can't do it.
Councillor Thomas is promoting himself, evidently.
That's
apologies,
okay.
I didn't realise.
Thank you very much. Right, shall we move swiftly on to an update on corporate parenting development? Steve, is this you taking this, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name's Steve Berry. I'm the Corporate Parenting Officer and Participation Officer for Bridgend County Borough Council. Today's report is for information and a request of yourselves to approve the terms of reference cited in Appendix 1. So the purpose of this report is mainly an update on the development of corporate parenting across Bridgend. First and foremost, an update on the vision and establishing a shared vision for our corporate parenting responsibilities. The Corporate Parenting Board will be meeting on the 25th of this month, and at that meeting we'll consider all of the consultations taken place to date, both with our children and young people and our professionals and counsellors, all of whom have had an opportunity to share their views on corporate parenting responsibilities, and a vision will be proposed at that meeting. I'd also like to share with you that the meeting will be hosted by our colleagues in the police, and this is something that we wish to go forward with, recognising that corporate parenting isn't solely the responsibility of the council, and our partners have stepped up to that in fairness. And the following meeting after that will be at the Fire and Rescue headquarters, and after that Bridgend College. So our partners are really recognising that this is a shared responsibility. So with that vision that would be agreed at the next board meeting, at February half term, our Young People's Forum will be coming together to discuss their expectations of us as corporate parents, and also their expectations of the care that they receive. And that will be in relation to the vision, and then that will then be shared. So their views will then be shared on the 6th of March at what we've called a pledge event, which yourselves have been invited to, where their young people's expectations will be shared. And at that stage, professionals and counsellors alike will be offered the opportunity to what we were planning on calling a pledge. But in reality, thinking of it from parents, if I ask my own boys to give me a helping hand in the house and say, well, I promise to take you out for tea tonight, I say promise. I don't say I pledge to take you out to tea tonight. So I think it's really important that we think about the language that we use with our children and young people. So I will be inviting professionals to be making promises. Now, we recognise that those professionals can only make promises that they have control of themselves. So they will be making promises around their roles and responsibilities to the specific tasks that they are responsible for. So I wouldn't expect a worker to promise the world. It will literally be what they have the ability to change. So moving on, those promises will be integrated into the draft strategic plan, and that will be brought to this next meeting in April, where a request will be for your approval and ratification of that draft strategic plan, during which time between now and then more work will be done pulling that together. With regards to governance, memberships have now been agreed, and as I stated before, are in the terms of reference, therefore your approval. And the memberships of the subgroups have been agreed. And this week we have now started running the subgroups. So we're bringing further professionals in across Bridgend County to be able to discuss on particular topics that are cited there within the terms of reference, talking on the priorities. And then finally, the report talks about our youth forum. This is now established. The young people will be meeting on a monthly basis. We have two groups, as and when those two groups may well come together if they're sharing topics and it's appropriate, age appropriate to do so. We've got some exciting plans in place, with one of our care leavers actually designing a brand for corporate parenting. As you can appreciate, whilst we may host corporate parenting as a council, we do have shared responsibilities with our partners, and therefore being able to provide an identity and a brand to corporate parenting other than our Bridgend County Borough Council logo would be something very, very important to us and our partners, but more especially for our children and young people to be able to identify to as well. And the young people will be involved in the planning of the Promise event, or what was the Pledge event, and also the launch. With regards to the launch, we've successfully been able to invite and secure the Children's Commissioner for Wales to be a keynote speaker at the launch in April. And we've also got the Deputy Minister for Social Services in Julie Morgan attending. So there's some really positive things in the pipeline, but a lot of work coming up. So I'd just like to close with the request that the approval for the draft terms of reference. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Steve. I'll place on record my thanks to Steve. I know how hard he's working in the background. I think it's one of the most important roles that we have as councillors of Bridgend County Borough, is the responsibility of corporate parenting. I would expect all our care experienced children to have a standard that we would want for our own children whenever we deal with them. So I'm really pleased with this. Does anybody have any questions for Steve, please? I think you may get off lightly this time, Steve, if I'm honest. And so if there are no questions, are we all happy to note? The leader's not going to put his hand up. He's just going to come in anyway. Leader.
Apologies, Chair. I just wanted to ask how the engagement has been from our partners, because you've obviously referenced it in your report to us today, the importance of partners, because corporate parenting is a collective responsibility for the state. I can't think of a better way of describing it for the public sector. And so for us to achieve the best corporate parenting for our care experienced children, we need all our partners to be fully engaged in this vision and achieving that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Leader. I think before I bring Steve in, what I would say from a political perspective is I don't think our partners had a full understanding of what their corporate parenting responsibilities were. I think they are exceptionally engaged now, much more so than I've ever seen previously, which I'm delighted with. But I'll give Steve he can give the operational response. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Leader. Yes, I'm really pleased to say, but I don't wish to curse this, but we really have had a positive response from partners. I've had 2 subgroup meetings this week, and all of the members attended. And where the specific named members weren't able to attend, in one instance, we had a partner provide 2 representations for their organisations because that named person couldn't attend. So people are taking it very seriously. As I said, also the board meetings are planned ahead and being hosted by our partners and not ourselves in the council. So that's a really positive one as well. And we've got a very broad representation both at the pledge/promise event and also that of the launch event. So fingers crossed. We will need to keep plugging that, but as the deputy said, there has needed to be some work behind the scenes explaining what corporate parenting is and our role. I will say, as soon as people heard those definitions, they stepped up to the plate straight away. So thank you. Sorry, Deputy, I couldn't hear you then.
Thank you. See, I've forgotten how to use a mic in my absence. Councillor Good, please.
Thanks, Deb. It'll all come flowing back very soon, I'm sure. I just wanted to add to the Dep's comments, really. I had the distinct privilege just before Christmas of attending a Christmas party for our foster children and our foster parents with the Deputy and the Mayor. And honestly, it was the most lovely event, and everyone I met there was so warm. The kids were so happy. They were enjoying themselves, and it was really a wonderful sight to see. And I just wanted to sort of reiterate the Dep's call, really, to all councillors to involve themselves as much as they can. We all know we all have very busy schedules, and we all have a lot of responsibilities with various different council roles. But this is something that is really important, and seeing the impact that you can have as a corporate parent, I think, is really wonderful. So just to turn that into a question, Steve, I was just wondering, have we got any plans for sort of how we can perhaps hold further events to engage council colleagues and to give them the opportunity to really see the wonderful work that the team do and our foster parents do to the cared for children in the borough? Thank you, Deb.
Thanks very much. I suppose for me, what I would suggest is that we invite them all to the Promise events that Steve's now changing the terminology for, which I agree with, by the way, Steve. Steve, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Good. What I would say in these subgroup meetings, what we've been doing is looking at all of the consultations that have been taken place and putting them together in text, and then going through and citing aims, objectives for the work plans for each of those subgroups. The board is not an exception, so there are some overarching themes that have come through that aren't specific to individual groups. So one, for a prime example, is providing the voice of the child. We didn't think that that could be a subgroup. It has to be throughout, and the only way that we can quality assure that that's happening is it being an aim and objective of the board itself. So one of those themes is training, promotion, and championing our roles and responsibilities. And I wrote it yesterday, professionals and counsellors. So it is in there to do that. It's how we plan that now going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks very much. If there are no further questions, then can we please consider the contents of this report and support the progress of the corporate parenting development? Please noting, of course, at 8.1, we have an extended the contract that is able to be extended with Troscanol plant for 18,000, but it will be funded through the children's social care budget. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't care how we
I'll
report.
second. I'll second.
All right.
It's fine.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good and Leader.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute again.
Oh, Steve. So if there are no further questions for anybody, I'd like to call this meeting to a close, please. I've been advised of no urgent business, I should have said, which I said when my mic was off. So apologies, everybody. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, folks.